to another edition of the Amazing Art Show. Did you guys hear that rooster call at the beginning of the show? Do you know what time it is? It's time for Whimsical Roosters today. We are going to be working on a fabulous project, and I'm going to give you a few seconds to gather up some stuff. This may require a visit to the store, the art store. I'm going to kind of talk to you a little bit about our product that we're using today. And I ordered this out of the Saks catalog, but I do believe that you can pick it up at like MJ Designs, Hobby Lobby, someplace like that. And it is a concentrated liquid watercolor. If you don't have this, or if you don't want to go out and get this from the store, you can use just regular watercolors. But I'm going to be using this today, and all it is just very, very concentrated color. So you know how usually when we work with watercolors, it's that very pastel-y, not very bright kind of colors? This is going to give us really, really rich color. So we're going to be needing this today, and you want really, really bright, vibrant colors. Try to stay away from blacks and browns and those shades. We want really, really bright colors today. Of course, you'll need water, brushes, maybe a tray to put some of your paints in. We're also going to pull up some pictures, maybe off the internet, of some roosters, because you can find some amazing stuff on the internet for roosters. Kind of what started me on this project today was this picture that I found. I recently went to Key West, and in Key West they have got wild roosters that are just running around crazy, just all over the streets. And so I happened to spot this rooster, and he just was very fascinating to me with his crazy tail feathers back there. So find some pictures of some roosters. You're going to need those. Also, you might grab some gel markers. Sometimes people call them Fooey markers. These are super cool. If you don't have any of these, you're going to love them. They give you nice, rich, rich color. Also, you might need some glue, pencil, eraser, ruler. You're going to need some paper that is kind of long and narrow today. 10 by 18 works pretty good. Like I said, if you don't have that, you can definitely modify a lot of what we're doing today. So if you can't find paper that size, you know, you can go a little bit smaller, bigger, whatever you need to do. Also, if you have watercolor paper, it would work great on watercolor paper. If you don't, it's no big deal, but it's going to make your paper curve a little bit. It's no big deal. Last thing that you might need, and this is just kind of for fun, is if you have some paint sets that maybe have some sparkly kind of paints in them, iridescent kind of paints, those are going to be really fun for our project today because these are whimsical roosters. Last thing I'm going to mention are some colorful feathers. And this is just if you want to. We'll talk about those at the very, very end. All right, so I'm going to give you a second to gather those things, and we are going to be getting started with our drawing today. All right. We are going to start by talking a little bit about whimsical roosters. And I was going on the internet and looking for images, because I'm always looking for new ideas for art projects. And I came across an artist, Kim Marks, and she has the most fabulous paintings that I've ever seen. They're very vibrant watercolors, and she does all kinds of different things. She does lots of roosters and, you know, flowers and gardens and things like that. But my favorite were the roosters because they were just these crazy, whimsical looking birds. So let's talk about really quick, what does whimsical mean? Whimsical is, it's very fun, and it's not in the ordinary. It's very kind of outside the box, which is one of those things I'm really trying to get my kids to work on this year, is thinking outside the box. So it doesn't have to look exactly like a rooster. I want you to have fun with it. So we want it to make it whimsical and fun and different. You know, it can just be full, it kind of humorous even would be okay. So maybe your rooster is, you know, crowing and all kinds of action going on in your picture, and that is fine because we're wanting lots of fun and action in your picture. All right, so we are going to get started on our whimsical roosters today, and I talked to you earlier about a really long and kind of tall sheet of paper. The reason why I was going for that is because we want to make these roosters really, really tall and big. So I want you to think today when you get started, I want you to make a mark kind of up at the top of your paper, and then you can also make a mark down towards the bottom. And I want you to try your very hardest, and I know it's hard, but I know you can do it. Make that rooster as big as you possibly can. All right, so we're going to get started with our drawing today. And remember, I've told you this before, and I'm going to say it again because it's very important. When you don't know how to draw something, and I'm here to tell you guys, I've never drawn a rooster before. This was my first rooster. So just because I'm an artist and I've been doing this a long time doesn't mean that I know how to do it. What did I do? I broke it down into shapes. you need to do the same. Break it down into shapes if you don't know how to do it. Now, boys and girls, this image that I'm working on today, I've already kind of pre-sketched it out because it's kind of tricky to be talking to you guys and concentrating on what I'm doing at the same time. So you may notice that I've got some light pencil lines in here, and these are just some little sketch lines that I kind of put in for my basic kind of shapes and what I wanted to create, so that as I'm working, I can talk to you guys and still be making a good drawing. So I kind of started at the top of my paper with kind of an oval shape for the head, and I'm going to kind of sketch out my idea first, and then I will go back and kind of add my details. And then basically the body of your rooster, if I'm looking at my little photograph that I brought today, is just basically kind of a big oval shape. So I'm going to give myself that big oval here. Now from here, I can start adding my other details. So I'm going to kind of start in on adding my details. This very top part, that little funny red part up on your rooster, is called the comb. And depending on what kind of rooster it is, it can have a different kind of looking comb, but they're just kind of little funny things. And then also on your rooster, you have got that shape that kind of comes down, and don't forget your beak in there. The rooster's eye, pretty round. I mean, it's kind of got that football shape that we've talked about before, but the eye inside is very round, and you don't really have the look of the iris and the pupil. Instead, it's very black looking. And I kind of like, instead of making the whole thing black, I kind of like to add a little highlight in there, kind of where the light would be hitting. And then I'm going to come in here. I was going to talk to you about the wattles. These little things that kind of hang down on either side that kind of waddle back and forth. These are called the wattles. And then we're going to start working on these big feathers that kind of come down. They kind of look, they're kind of funny looking because they kind of look like a little vest on the rooster. And I'm not being real precise with my drawing. I'm just kind of, I mean, they're feathers, so they lay kind of jig-jagged. So I'm just kind of, with some sketchy kind of lines, I'm just kind of going back over to create that real feathery looking vest shape. And as I come down into my oval, I'm going to fatten up my chicken a little bit, or my rooster, I'm sorry. Shouldn't call it a chicken, that would offend it. Roosters are boys. All right, so I'm going to come in here and add some of these details on the hind quarters of my rooster. All right, and keep in mind that you do not want to be using real straight kind of lines here. You really want to go for more of that jig-jagged or kind of almost zigzag, but it's not really a true zigzag. It's kind of irregular. It's kind of whimsical, like we're going for today. And as I come down here, keep in mind, different roosters have different types of feet, so you want to kind of take a look at the rooster that you're drawing. If you can't see its feet, that's another good point. If you can't see its feet, then you know what? It's kind of up to you. Typically, they kind of have the two toes in the front and then one in the back. They also have this little thing that kind of comes on the back here. I don't know if you guys can see that. It's called a spur. So you know cowboys, and they have spurs on the back of their boots, but roosters have spurs on the back of their legs. I don't think they use them for the same purpose of riding horses though. So now we are going to also come in here, and these feathers that kind of come across the back of the rooster are called the saddle feathers. And they also are kind of like those long, narrow kind of feathers that come down over the breast part of the rooster. All right, so we're going to add these, and these are called the saddle feathers. And they kind of hang low, kind of over the back of the rooster's back, so kind of like a saddle would on a horse. And then for your back tail feathers, I want you to remember we're going for whimsical, so they don't have to be real precise. The other thing that I would like for you to also keep in mind is when you're working today, if you get going on your drawing and let's just say that you're doing so good and you're making it so big because you followed directions so good and you run out of room, don't forget that when you're working on a project, and just because you're creating something does not mean that you have to see the total picture. You can always have parts of it, you know, maybe my picture just goes from here and you just see the top part of the rooster. That would be okay too. So keep in mind that, you know, everything doesn't have to fit. You can have things that run off the page, and that just adds interest to your work. So our tail feathers, my tail feathers are not going to fit all on my paper, and that's okay. All right, so I am just about finished here. I'm going to add some real fluffy feathers there on the back end and a few other little short feathers in here. And don't forget the wing. That's a pretty major part. So I'm going to come in and add that kind of that wing shape. All right, now I've added those saddle feathers and I've added my tail feathers, and I am just about finished. Now the next part of my drawing, don't forget we are also kind of working with, you know, there would be parts of it that would show and then there would be parts that wouldn't show. So go back and erase what you don't need. So when I first started, I started with that oval shape, and I don't need that, so I can erase it. Because our watercolors, even though they're going to be really bright, vibrant colors, they do show your pencil marks. So if you've got some lines still showing, probably would be a good idea to go back and erase those. Especially in this area, because I'm going to make my feathers up here, I'm going to make those more probably yellows and oranges. So it's going to be pretty light in color. All right, now, next thing I told you earlier that we were going to need a ruler. And can't get my ruler. All right, for your picture, Kim Marks was really big not only in these whimsical roosters, but she also created really interesting patterned borders that went all the way around her roosters, depending on how much of her rooster was showing. So a couple things that I want to talk to you about is I see lots of kids that come in and they don't really know exactly how to use their ruler, and rulers can be kind of tricky because they're kind of slippery. So couple pointers about your ruler. As you are getting your ruler lined up, you have to eyeball it and you have to look at it, and does it look straight? I have a lot of kids that come in and they think just because it's a ruler and it's straight that means it's going to make a straight line. And it will, but it doesn't mean that it won't be slanted to one side or a little more diagonal than straight. So you have to eyeball it. Use your good judgment and look at it. If you're lining it up for a border, you can always line it up with the edge of your paper, which is typically pretty straight. So that's usually what I do. I line it up with the edge of my paper, but I also eyeball it, because just because your paper comes and it looks pretty straight to you doesn't mean that it necessarily is. So kind of eyeball it. You want to just kind of look at it. Second thing is the placement of your hands. I see lots of kids that come in and they hold their ruler like this, and as they begin to draw, their ruler is wiggling around like this. And then they get really frustrated. So as you're using your ruler, get it lined up, and then your hand placement is very important. I want you to put your index finger and your middle finger should be up at the top, and then spread out your hand, and your thumb should come down to the bottom. So this is how it should look. If you have your fingers hanging over like this, you're going to end up sketching your fingers. We don't want that. So make sure that you scoot them back onto the body of the ruler, not on the edge, and then you're going to sketch out that line. Now, as I'm sketching, I've got some firm pressure down on my ruler. I can't just, you know, barely hold it or it's going to wiggle around. So put a little muscle into it. You didn't think you needed muscles to do art, but you do. You need all kinds of muscles for everything that you do. So I'm going to line up my edge again and sketch out my line. I need to do the same thing on the other side. Now, this time, we've talked before about overlapping. And this is kind of the same thing. I'm going to turn my paper because it's a little easier for me to see what's going on. I'm going to line up with the edge, and my border is not going to go through all of my tail feathers. It's not on top of my tail feathers. My bird is on the outer part. It should be overlapping the border, if that makes sense. So my border is only going to show in some places where I do not have tail feathers. So I'm looking as I'm drawing in these little fluff feathers that are in the hind quarters, coming down here, and I'm just hopping over wherever I see rooster. All right, and as I line this up again, another thing that I see kids do is they kind of line things up and they don't line it back up with their line that they already started. I always like to get my hand situated, get my ruler situated, put my pencil where it was before, and make sure that I'm lined up. Once I know that I am, then I know I can carry it all the way through. All right, so I've got the two sides. My ruler is not cooperating today, you guys. All right, same thing goes for on your rooster's head. You do not want it to go through the comb of your rooster. So watch what you're doing, line things up. And same thing on the bottom. Now, we were talking about how this is going to be heavily patterned. So that's kind of up to you guys as far as what kind of a pattern you want to come up with. You could do checkerboard, you could do different types of shapes, you could do some kind of a repeated line, you know, vertical lines, horizontal lines, diagonal lines. That's kind of up to you. I think that just because I'm feeling like it today, I'm going to do kind of a horizontal line pattern. And the best way to do that is to lay out my ruler. And since I'm going to be working kind of going up this way, I'm going to have to adjust the way that I hold my hand. But I'm still going to make sure that I separate out my fingers to give my ruler some good support. Now I've lined it up with my horizontal line for my border, and I'm just going to come in and I'm going to use the width of my ruler, because you don't have to use the width of your ruler, but I'm going to use the width of my ruler because it's a little bit easier. And I know that I'm going really fast. We kind of have to do that because the show's only so long. I don't expect you guys to go as fast as I do, so take your time. It's not a race. I can't tell you how many kiddos that I have that are just, I'm finished. And I'm like, no, you're not. Take your time. So slow down and take your time. And as I'm working, I'm trying to make sure, I'm eyeballing it as I go to make sure that my ruler is staying horizontal and it's not getting any kind of a little slant to it. And I'm just going to continue this pattern all the way up. Now, since I'm doing a horizontal pattern that is going on either side, I'm going to want to do something different in the upper and lower portions of my border. And that's going to kind of be, you know, your decision too if you decide to do something like that. All right, my ruler is wiggling around. I got this new little ruler, and it's really cool, and it snaps and folds in half, but it's kind of wiggly. That's not good. Wiggly rulers are not good. All right, so as I'm continuing this, I'm just about finished. And I'm thinking to myself what I want to do in the top part. I'm not quite sure yet. All right, now when I get to the top here, I'm going to end up, it's not going to quite be the squares that I have down there. It's no big deal, so don't worry about it. I think what I will do is maybe just come in with some kind of a, I don't know, I'm just going to do some kind of an oval-y kind of shape, I guess. Remember that these are whimsical, so they can just be anything you want them to be. You might even want to break it up with some other kind of a pattern. Maybe you want to do some other kind of shape in between. You could also, another thing that would be kind of interesting in this project is you could paint everything, and then at the end you could come in with some sponge and you could do some different kind of stamping process. Would be also be interesting. And these are not perfect by any means. And I've actually got more on the bottom than I do on the top, and that's okay too. Because remember, these are whimsical and fun. All right, last thing that we're going to do is I want you to think about some kind of a pattern that you can put back here in your background. I think I'm just going to do some big dots today. Maybe I may add some variety and do some different sizes as well. Maybe that's chicken feed that they're throwing down. Maybe it's dinner time. Or maybe it's snowing. I don't know. Kind of looks like both. All right, so we are just about finished here. Our next step is going to be to go back and outline everything. Now, outlining is kind of optional. I'm this type of person. I like to outline because it helps me as I'm beginning to paint really see what goes where and, you know, where I need to get color and where I don't. Kind of helps me just define the space a little bit better. Don't forget that in between those tail feathers you can get some of those little dots in there as well. All right, so I have got my sketch finished and I'm going to start outlining. You can use either a Sharpie marker or you could use a gel marker. The black gel marker works great too. And you are going to begin just basically, you need to outline everything. And this part really does go pretty quick because you've already got the concept there. You're just going back over it. Now, one thing that I will say, I've got lots of little kiddos that as they start sketching, not sketching, when they start going back over it, they're not very good about really following the line that they made. And that's okay. But remember what I said about go back and erase your pencil lines because we don't want any of those to show. If you've got any little bitty details, you might want to use a little bit more thin marker. All right, so we're going to continue doing this, and I'm going to actually switch because I've already got one that I already have all outlined, and so that we can kind of get this going a little bit quicker. And remember also, before I switch over, what I said about their eyes. Mainly all black, and I just add a little bitty kind of highlight in there. All right, so I'm going to switch over, and we're going to kind of start the painting process. Put that over there. All right, now, so here is my rooster, and I have outlined most of him. I didn't finish with my border, but I'm going to kind of do a little bit of it just to kind of show you a couple little things, and then I'm going to get to the painting process because these paints that we're using today are so cool. All right, so we are going to get started with paints. So make sure that you have finished your outlining, finished your patterning, and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so you're going to need a little bit of water, and you're going to need brush and 2 different sizes would probably be pretty good. Pretty thick brush for your border area. No, not for your border, for your background area. Smaller brush for your border and your chicken. Rooster, rooster. Keep offending him, I'm sure. I'm very sorry. All right. Okay. So with your paints, these are really, really cool. And you can also mix the colors very easily. And I'm just going to kind of get going with some, can't see my colors. All right. So I've got some orange. And as I get going today, you're going to see just how bright these colors are. And they're just really, really fun. All right, now, as I begin to add color, remember that these are more concentrated. So that means that we are going to be needing a little bit of water, but we want the color to be really, really bright. So as we get started today, and you can start anywhere you would like, I'm going to kind of start up in this tail area because I'm probably not going to finish my whole painting with you today. I've got one that's already finished, but I wanted to show you just kind of how rich this color is and what a nice coverage it gives you. So you're going to come in here and remember that these roosters are very, very colorful and they're whimsical, they're fun. So don't be so constricted thinking about, oh, well, it has to be black here or it has to be red here. Don't worry about that. It's fun, and this is like the silliest rooster you're ever going to meet. So just have fun with it, add lots of color. So I'm just going to kind of come in and add color here and there. And you know, think about maybe where you might have some shadows because you can also use that for shadows. And also, another thing that I want to talk to you about really, really quick is as you are adding color, especially in these top feathers up here, think about, I want you to try mixing colors. As a matter of fact, when I gave my kids this assignment, I told them that they had to use at least 9 colors on the rooster. So when you really think about it, you know, you've got the comb and you've got the wattle and the tail feathers, you can easily get all those colors in there. All right, so we're going to kind of fast forward really quick. So we are going to show you kind of the finished product. All right, so we have got my rooster. I've added tons and tons of color, as you can see. And remember when I talked to you earlier about your paper being kind of wavy? This is not a watercolor paper, but I have a fix for you. If you are using just regular paper and you get done watercoloring it, what happens is the fibers in the paper kind of start to buckle a little bit and you get this kind of wavy paper. A couple things. You could get a couple heavy books, lay out on it, or you could get an iron, get mom to help you with the iron. You can actually iron out your work. So I do that a lot at school. So last little couple things that you can do that I want to talk to you about is you can, you know, put this on your piece of paper. And last little couple things that you can do. You can go back with those gel markers and add lots of little details with those gel markers. You can get lots of those little lines, and you can even come in with some pattern. If you had a little mess up or a little goof up, you can kind of come in and fix it with your markers as well. If you had any of that sparkly kind of paint, you can come in there, and you know, who's to say that this rooster isn't just a sparkly rooster? So you can add all kinds of sparkles. And if you happen, and I'm kind of finger painting, but that's okay. All right, so you can come in there and add some of those different kinds of details. Iridescent paints also work out really, really neat and kind of give a nice effect as well. Kind of coming in and adding just a little bit of shimmer. So the last little thing that we did at school is I told the kids that they could get some kind of a feather that would kind of go down at the bottom. Kind of like this feather was being all rowdy and one of his little feathers fell out. So it's kind of a neat little touch that you can do towards the very end there. All right, let's do our art quote for the day. It's not a matter of painting life. It's a matter of giving life to painting. By Jeffrey Smart, an Italian painter. All right, boys and girls, we are all done for today. We've got our black piece of paper. We've got our little feather. We've added lots of whimsy and fun details to our artwork today. I hope you had as much fun as I did. Thank you so much for joining us today. Now go out and make some amazing art.